dawn spread across the Garden of Eden, before the rivers gleamed with crystalline clarity and the sunlight touched the leaves with a delicate golden hue, God formed Adam from the clay of the earth, carefully shaping every curve and contour, and then breathed into him the breath of life. In that singular act, Adam became more than flesh. He became a living soul, imbued with awareness, purpose, and the capacity to feel and reason. Yet the Creator, in infinite foresight, understood that Adam alone could not fulfill the fullness of creation. From the same fertile clay, equal in substance and form, God shaped a woman, Lilith, whose essence was imbued with the same vitality and divine breath as Adam. When she opened her eyes for the first time, she beheld the garden in all its unblemished perfection, her awareness complete and radiant, her spirit alive with understanding of herself and the universe around her. She was fully cognizant of her own value, of the power and possibility within her, and of the delicate balance of the world she entered. In that moment, the garden itself seemed to pause, as if holding its breath, the air quivering with the weight of recognition. The first humans, standing opposite one another, perceived reflection and tension, potential and promise, as if the divine blueprint for companionship had already begun to hum through the living soil and the canopy of stars above. Adam regarded Lilith with a mixture of curiosity, admiration, and unease, a complex interplay of emotion that he had never encountered before. Her presence was at once familiar and astonishing, a mirror of himself in form, spirit, and vitality. She moved with confidence, her gaze steady, her posture infused with purpose and awareness. When Lilith spoke, her voice carried clarity and certainty, a tone that brooked no compromise. Equality must be honored, partnership must not demand submission, and each being created from the same clay must stand as a counterpart, a peer, a reflection, never a subordinate. Adam, having never encountered resistance, felt an unfamiliar flame of frustration and confusion rise within him. For the first time, the notion of free will manifested as a challenge, an intimate test of character, and the garden, so accustomed to silence and perfect harmony, bore witness to the inaugural human confrontation. In that encounter, the seeds of human moral consciousness were planted. Lilith's words were not merely assertion. They were a divine principle articulated through mortal lips, a reminder that the recognition of equality is fundamental, and that the tension between autonomy and authority would ripple throughout human history, long before the first sigh of regret or the first exercise of conscience. Lilith refused to bow to Adam or to the unspoken assumption of dominance. She did not yield her body, her will, or her voice, nor did she compromise her understanding of the divine order that had placed them both in the garden as equals. Her insistence on parity was not a simple act of defiance, but a profound recognition of her own intrinsic worth and the necessity of balance in all creation. Adam's pride, untested until that moment, flared with confusion and anger, and he instinctively sought to assert authority over her, unaware that submission cannot be demanded where equality is inherent. The conflict that arose between them, though quiet and measured, carried monumental significance because the Creator had endowed both with the power of moral awareness and the ability to exercise free choice. Lilith's refusal to submit demonstrated that human consciousness is bound to responsibility, that autonomy is inseparable from accountability, and that the exercise of will carries consequences from the very moment life begins. This first confrontation served as an archetype, illustrating how freedom, assertion, and moral courage interact in the human experience, and planting within the garden the enduring lesson that true equality is not simply granted, but actively defended. Standing firm, Lilith spoke with a voice both steady and unyielding, declaring, "We are equal, each formed from the same earth. I will not yield to domination or deny my essence to another." Her words carried the weight of timeless truth, resonating with the order of creation itself, and they left Adam unsettled. He had expected compliance, harmony, and perhaps even admiration for his form and presence, yet instead he faced a partner whose assertion mirrored his own power. Confusion and anger stirred within him, emotions he had never before confronted, and he began to perceive that true partnership requires the acknowledgement of mutual dignity. The garden, silent and attentive, seemed to absorb the tension between their wills, observing the unfolding dynamic of authority, respect, and equality. Lilith's refusal was not merely a rejection of Adam's desire, it was the embodiment of free will, the demonstration that moral and spiritual freedom is a cornerstone of creation. Her stance was both a challenge and affirmation, signaling that autonomy and divine order are intertwined, and that the first act of human assertion was not rebellion against the Creator, but a profound engagement with the principles of balance and moral responsibility. The conflict between Adam and Lilith lingered, unresolved, like a subtle hum beneath the beauty of Eden. The harmony that had been presumed between them fractured under the weight of recognition, the realization that will and independence are inseparable from moral agency. Lilith's gaze remained unwavering, her posture firm and unbowed, communicating that hierarchy could not override equality, and that true companionship required acknowledgement of parity. The garden, lush and abundant, seemed suddenly infused with a quiet tension, the first human awareness of relational complexity and ethical consequence. Adam's understanding of union and partnership was tested in ways he had not anticipated. Through Lilith's steadfastness, principles of obedience, respect, and the cost of asserting dominance became etched into the very fabric of human consciousness. The silent dialogue between presence and absence, assertion and response, created an ethical template, teaching that relationships are not merely physical or functional arrangements, but moral engagements that demand awareness, reflection, and the recognition of autonomy as sacred. Choosing freedom over subordination, Lilith stepped away from Eden rather than compromise the integrity of her being. Her departure was deliberate, conscious, and rooted in a profound understanding of autonomy, responsibility, and selfhood. She moved toward the untamed wilderness beyond the ordered boundaries of the garden, carrying with her the principles of choice and moral courage. Adam, left to witness this decisive act, experienced a mixture of sorrow, awe, and introspection, recognizing both the necessity of her independence and the consequences of its assertion. Lilith's departure marked the first human exercise of full autonomy, a movement beyond paradise into the unknown, yet still under the watchful gaze of the Creator. This act of leaving was not merely flight, but a demonstration that freedom requires moral courage, that the assertion of will carries consequences, and that the pursuit of integrity often demands the relinquishing of comfort. Her choice established a precedent for human engagement with moral consequence, signaling that life outside Eden, while perilous, offers the profound reward of self-determination and ethical clarity. As Lilith entered the wilderness, she encountered the untamed world in its raw, chaotic majesty. She moved among creatures and elements unmediated by the ordered confines of Eden, learning to navigate challenges, to assert authority over her environment, and to understand the laws of survival, harmony, and interaction in unstructured life. Here, she discovered the weight and necessity of freedom, realizing that autonomy is inseparable from responsibility. Every choice she made had immediate consequences, shaping not only her destiny, but also the contours of her moral and spiritual growth. Lilith's journey was the first human encounter with independence in its pure form, unbound, unprotected, and unregulated, yet rich with opportunity for mastery and self-realization. Her experiences in the wilderness became the living testament to the courage required to exercise free will, illustrating that moral agency extends beyond obedience, beyond the safety of divine provision, into a realm where every action resonates through time, consequence, and the unfolding narrative of humanity. The wilderness, once feared or unknown, became a space for empowerment, reflection, and the cultivation of a deeply grounded selfhood. Adam, remaining in Eden, faced the profound solitude that followed Lilith's departure. The garden, though still abundant with rivers that gleamed under the sun, trees heavy with fruit, and animals moving freely, could not fill the void left by the absence of his equal. He wrestled with the lessons embedded in her choice, confronting the complexities of equality, companionship, and the consequences of attempting to dominate rather than partner with one who mirrors one's own essence. In his reflection, Adam began to perceive that freedom, once claimed, transforms relationships, creating spaces of absence that prompt deeper understanding. The garden, though unchanged in appearance, now held a subtle but indelible moral depth, a silent record of the first human engagement with autonomous choice. Adam's meditation revealed that equality is not merely a social or relational concept, but a moral and spiritual principle requiring recognition, respect, and humility. Through absence, he learned that autonomy brings both insight and challenge, shaping the moral, emotional, and philosophical foundation of human existence from the very beginning. Lilith's journey deeper into the wilderness revealed both the challenges and the hidden gifts of unbounded freedom. She encountered forests thick with shadows, rivers flowing untamed and wild, and mountains that tested her endurance and understanding of the world's rhythms. Among these forces of nature, she discovered her own capacity to navigate uncertainty, assert authority, and shape her environment through insight and will. Mystical texts and later legends describe Lilith as encountering spirits, elemental forces, and other entities beyond ordinary human perception, beings whose recognition of her independence further affirmed her moral and spiritual agency. Each encounter required careful negotiation, reflection, and decisive action, teaching her that autonomy is inseparable from responsibility. That choice carries consequences not just for the self, but for all beings influenced by those choices. Lilith's actions in the wilderness demonstrated that freedom is not passive, but active, a continuous engagement with the surrounding world. Her courage, intelligence, and steadfastness in asserting her will became the blueprint for understanding human independence. Freedom is powerful, demanding, and deeply intertwined with moral awareness, wisdom, and consequence. The Creator observed Lilith's journey with quiet attention, recognizing that her defiance was not an act of rebellion against divine order, but a manifestation of the gift of free will. By leaving Eden, she exercised autonomy fully, illustrating the intricate balance between obedience, choice, and moral consequence. Her actions revealed the depth of understanding necessary to navigate life beyond immediate divine protection. Adam, in reflection, began to see the full weight of this lesson, recognizing that partnership and authority cannot exist without mutual recognition, and that the exercise of freedom is inherently bound to responsibility. The garden itself seemed to hold these lessons in its atmosphere, a subtle moral resonance that echoed through the rivers, trees, and winds. Lilith's independence became both a mirror and a challenge for Adam, demonstrating that moral courage often involves moving beyond comfort and certainty, while also highlighting that the exercise of choice carries reverberations far beyond the individual. Her journey was a living lesson, a demonstration that autonomy is sacred, freedom is profound, and that the cultivation of wisdom and moral awareness is inseparable from the act of living fully in accordance with one's own principles. Legends recount that Lilith bore children of the night, mysterious beings born from her independence and her defiance, spirits whose existence carried the profound consequences of exercising free will. These children, unbound by the confines of Eden, traveled the earth, influencing the unfolding moral and spiritual tapestry of creation. In mystical traditions, they are portrayed as manifestations of choice and consequence, a living record of the power inherent in autonomous action. Lilith's legacy, therefore, was not confined to herself. It extended into the world through the ripple effects of moral courage and conscious decision-making. Her narrative became a testament to the enduring impact of asserting one's agency, demonstrating that human and spiritual freedom resonates beyond immediate action, shaping the lives, environments, and spiritual realities touched by those choices. Through this, Lilith's story reveals the complex interplay between independence, moral responsibility, and the far-reaching influence of human action. It underscores that every assertion of freedom carries consequences, and that courage and ethical awareness are intertwined in the ongoing development of human consciousness and spiritual reality. Adam's solitude, following Lilith's departure, deepened his understanding of relational and moral responsibility. Alone in the midst of abundance, he reflected on the principles of partnership, equality, and respect, recognizing that companionship cannot thrive when one seeks domination over the other. The absence of Lilith brought clarity to his understanding, revealing that mutual recognition of dignity is essential to any union, and that relational harmony arises from the acknowledgement of autonomy rather than coercion. Scholars of these narratives note that this profound reflection set the stage for Eve's creation, embedding within it the lessons learned from Lilith's conscious assertion of independence. Adam's introspection emphasized that moral awareness, tempered by the experience of loss or absence, becomes foundational to human understanding of partnership and cooperation. The garden, still fertile and abundant, now carried an invisible moral depth, a subtle yet enduring record of the first human engagement with equality, consequence, and responsibility. Adam's contemplation revealed that relational wisdom is inseparable from ethical and spiritual growth, and that the principles of partnership require both self-awareness and recognition of the other's inherent value. Though the garden remained unchanged in its visible abundance, its moral and spiritual texture had shifted subtly yet profoundly. Rivers flowed as they always had, reflecting sunlight across their crystalline surfaces. Trees bore fruit rich and abundant, and animals moved freely through the landscape. Yet beneath this serene exterior, the lessons of autonomy, consequence, and moral discernment had been etched into the very fabric of creation. Adam's reflection on Lilith's absence marked the first conscious engagement with these truths. The understanding that freedom is not without cost, that choice creates both opportunity and responsibility, and that relational harmony is inseparable from respect for autonomy. In contemplating these lessons, Adam began to perceive the intricacy of human moral consciousness, recognizing that obedience alone cannot cultivate virtue, and that true wisdom emerges through reflection, encounter, and ethical action. The garden, untouched in its physical beauty, now bore the invisible marks of moral depth, offering a silent education in the complexities of freedom, partnership, and the ethical engagement with life that would shape the unfolding story of humanity. Lilith's story extended far beyond the boundaries of Eden, a path winding through forests, deserts, rivers, and unknown lands, each encounter shaping her understanding of the natural and spiritual world. The texts emphasize that her actions were not motivated by malice or rebellion against the Creator, but by a conscious assertion of selfhood, a deliberate choice to honor autonomy and moral courage. In confronting challenges beyond Eden, Lilith cultivated wisdom, resilience, and insight into the consequences of unbound freedom. Her journey exemplifies the complexity inherent in moral decision-making, that every action carries weight, every choice carries consequence, and every exercise of independence demands reflection and responsibility. Through her life beyond Eden, she became a symbol of human courage, demonstrating that autonomy is sacred, that freedom is profound, and that ethical engagement with the world requires both awareness and discernment. The narrative preserves the idea that moral and spiritual growth is inseparable from action, that selfhood is forged through experience, and that the human journey is defined by the careful exercise of choice in accordance with principle. Adam's reflection on Lilith's departure gradually deepened his understanding of human partnership, authority, and the significance of equality in relationship. Through her absence, he came to recognize the subtle but profound ways in which hierarchy can distort connection and mutual understanding. He contemplated obedience versus respect, dominance versus collaboration, and realized that true companionship requires acknowledgement of mutual dignity and the honoring of individual autonomy. Lilith's defiance, though painful in its immediacy, became a foundational lesson, an archetype of moral courage and self-determination whose resonance would inform future human behavior. The story suggests that these lessons were integral to Adam's own moral development, preparing him for future relational engagements and shaping the ethical frameworks through which humanity would navigate partnership and responsibility. In reflecting upon these truths, Adam began to grasp that freedom, equality, and ethical consequence are inseparable, and that the cultivation of moral awareness requires the active exercise of judgment, empathy, and discernment in every relational encounter. Lilith's independence allowed her to encounter and master the forces of the natural world, asserting authority over her choices and her surroundings. She learned to navigate complexity, to adapt to unforeseen circumstances, and to exercise discernment in every interaction with the untamed earth. Each step in her journey emphasized the inseparability of autonomy and responsibility, revealing that freedom is not merely the absence of constraint, but the conscious engagement with consequence. Through her actions, she demonstrated the foundational principle that human moral understanding arises not only from obedience or instruction, but from the careful navigation of real-life challenges, from reflection upon experience, and from the courage to act in accordance with principle. Lilith's mastery of the wilderness exemplifies the sacred interplay between choice, consequence, and growth, offering a model for human engagement with life that is both courageous and ethically aware. Her journey illustrates that moral wisdom emerges from experience, that independence carries weight, and that the exercise of freedom is itself a profound act of ethical and spiritual education. Though absent from Eden, Lilith's influence persisted, permeating Adam's thoughts, reflections, and understanding of the principles of partnership and autonomy. Her departure became a living presence in his consciousness, a reminder of the weight and importance of moral courage, selfhood, and the ethical assertion of will. Adam began to grasp that lessons in morality, respect, and responsibility do not always arise from presence or instruction alone. They often emerge through absence, through the void left by one who asserts independence and challenges established expectation. In this quiet reflection, Adam came to understand that relational wisdom is inseparable from the acknowledgement of equality, and that absence can illuminate truths invisible in immediate proximity. Eden, while unchanged in its abundance and beauty, became a space of moral reflection, where the memory of Lilith's choice served as a perpetual lesson in autonomy, accountability, and the ethical dimensions of human will. Her impact revealed the subtle and enduring ways in which independent action shapes consciousness, forming a bridge between lived experience and moral understanding, teaching that the exercise of freedom carries both insight and responsibility. Legends and mystical texts record Lilith's continued interactions with unseen and spiritual realms, revealing a dimension of human and cosmic influence that transcends ordinary perception. Her independence and moral courage allowed her to shape and interact with spiritual realities, demonstrating that free will extends beyond the immediate, visible world. In these accounts, Lilith's presence among spirits and ethereal entities illustrates that the exercise of autonomy has profound consequences, rippling across planes of existence that are rarely observed but deeply consequential. Her engagement with the unseen reinforces the principle that moral agency and conscious choice are foundational to the structure of reality itself, influencing both human and spiritual domains. By acting with awareness, courage, and deliberate intent, Lilith exemplified that independence is not merely a personal attribute, but a force capable of shaping environments, outcomes, and the subtle threads of consequence in the cosmos. Her story underscores the profound truth that freedom and responsibility are inseparable, and that moral courage is both visible in the material world and deeply operative in spiritual and metaphysical realms. Lilith became the first human to embody moral courage fully, demonstrating that the exercise of choice, even in defiance of expectation, is a sacred engagement with the divine order. Her refusal to yield, her insistence on equality, and her deliberate choice to leave Eden exemplify the deep responsibilities that accompany freedom. In doing so, she revealed the foundational principle that independence requires not only courage, but wisdom, discernment, and recognition of consequence. Lilith's life illustrates that autonomy is not reckless liberty, but an intentional, conscious interaction with moral and spiritual realities, shaping both the self and the broader world. Through her choices, she became a paradigm for human action, that freedom, when exercised ethically, is both powerful and transformative, creating a legacy that resonates beyond immediate perception. Her moral courage set a precedent for all who would follow, emphasizing that the pursuit of selfhood and the assertion of will are inherently bound to responsibility, consequence, and the sacred principles of divine and human order. Adam's reflections on Lilith's absence prepared him profoundly for the creation of Eve. The lessons embedded in Lilith's defiance, the recognition of equality, the ethical responsibility of partnership, and the consequences of asserting or denying will, shaped Adam's understanding of companionship in ways that would inform human relational consciousness forever. Through the encounter with absence and reflection, he internalized the principle that autonomy must be balanced with harmony, and that partnership is not merely an arrangement of proximity, but a mutual acknowledgement of dignity, choice, and respect. The garden, still vibrant and teeming with life, became a space of contemplation and understanding, where Adam began to recognize the sacred interplay between freedom and moral responsibility. Lilith's journey offered insight into the complex balance required for ethical companionship, preparing Adam for a relational dynamic that honors the presence, voice, and autonomy of another being, thereby laying the groundwork for a deeper understanding of human connection, love, and shared moral growth. Lilith's continued life beyond Eden emphasized the profound consequences inherent in the exercise of freedom and the assertion of autonomy. Her choices reverberated, creating patterns of moral influence and spiritual awareness that extended far beyond the immediate landscape she inhabited. She became a figure of courage and conscious agency, a living example of how independent action shapes both individual destiny and the broader moral fabric of humanity. Her story illustrates that the act of asserting freedom, when executed with awareness and intentionality, carries enduring significance, impacting human understanding of responsibility, ethical consequence, and relational dynamics. Lilith's life beyond Eden reinforced the principle that true independence requires wisdom, discernment, and a conscious engagement with the effects of one's choices, demonstrating that moral courage is inseparable from ethical responsibility. Her influence, therefore, is both symbolic and practical, offering a timeless meditation on the interplay between choice, consequence, and the shaping of human moral consciousness. Lilith's exile marked a pivotal moment in human engagement with moral consequence outside the immediate oversight of divine order. Her autonomy was fully realized, a conscious manifestation of freedom in its most complete form, revealing that human identity is inseparable from the exercise of choice and the acceptance of responsibility. In stepping beyond Eden, she demonstrated that moral and spiritual growth emerges not solely from obedience or structure, but from deliberate action in accordance with principle. Each decision she made in the wilderness, each assertion of selfhood, became a living lesson in the ethical realities of human life, that independence requires reflection, courage, and awareness, and that freedom carries consequences, extending far beyond the individual. Lilith's example underscores that humanity's engagement with autonomy, responsibility, and moral discernment begins with conscious choice, forming the foundation of ethical and spiritual understanding that will shape generations and the unfolding human story. Legends of Lilith, preserved and transmitted across generations, recount her as the first human to assert equality without compromise. Her narrative became both cautionary and instructive, a testament to the profound responsibilities that accompany freedom. The stories highlight the delicate balance between asserting autonomy and understanding moral consequence, demonstrating that the exercise of free will is inseparable from ethical and spiritual accountability. Lilith's legacy, transmitted through myth, scripture, and mystical tradition, illustrates the enduring power of conscious choice, the significance of moral courage, and the necessity of respecting equality in human engagement. Her narrative continues to inspire reflection on the intersection of freedom, responsibility, and ethical action, reminding humanity that moral agency is both a privilege and a weighty responsibility, foundational to the structure of human identity and relational understanding. Her story endured as a lesson in freedom, responsibility, and equality, transcending time and culture to leave an indelible mark on the moral imagination of humanity. Lilith's departure from Eden was not simply an act of personal assertion, it was a defining moment in the understanding of human will, demonstrating that the exercise of autonomy carries profound consequences for selfhood, relationships, and spiritual awareness. Adam, reflecting upon her absence, gained insight into the importance of mutual respect, equality, and ethical engagement, internalizing lessons that would inform human partnership, governance, and social conduct. Lilith's narrative thus functions as a moral compass, illustrating the enduring importance of conscious choice and the interplay between freedom and responsibility. Her departure, while marking the loss of immediate companionship, created a lasting educational framework for humanity, one that emphasizes the sacred nature of autonomy, the weight of decision, and the deep consequences that flow from the ethical exercise of free will. Lilith remains the first woman, a symbol of courage, moral complexity, and the profound consequences of conscious choice. Her story, unfolding within the sacred narrative of Genesis itself, teaches that autonomy is sacred, that the exercise of free will is weighty, and that moral responsibility is inseparable from freedom. Adam, Eden, and all of creation bear witness to her decisions, which constitute the first human test of equality, agency, and ethical discernment. Her life demonstrates that courage in asserting selfhood is not merely personal. It resonates across relationships, societies, and even spiritual realities, shaping the moral and metaphysical fabric of existence. Lilith's legacy endures eternally as a meditation on human will, divine order, and the responsibilities inherent in freedom. She embodies the principle that autonomy, exercised with awareness, transforms both the individual and the world, establishing her as a timeless paradigm, for the interplay of choice, consequence, and moral courage in the unfolding story of humanity. This is the Abyss of Scripture channel. Like the video, share it with a friend and subscribe for more videos like this one. Thank you for watching.